Alexi, welcome back to the show again, my friend. 2 episodes with you.
Hey, man, if one is good, then two is gooder.
Yes, and the next time we'll do 3, right?
Absolutely. Listen, anytime. I love speaking with you, and I love what you are doing and have done and everything that you've built. So you should give yourself a pat on the back in terms of what you built and the things that you talk about.
I appreciate that, my friend. I appreciate that. Now, the MLS is about to participate in the Club World Cup. They got 3 teams, actually. Kind of a wonky situation of how it happened. You know, they were only going to have 1 team. Now they have 3 teams. Actually, they were going to have 2 because Inter Miami. But Liga MX was going to dominate our region in this tournament. But now we have LAFC, Inter Miami, and we also have the Seattle Sounders. They're a little bit more forgettable. But before we get into that, I want to ask you this because of what we just saw this past Sunday. Cruz Azul just absolutely whooped the Vancouver Whitecaps. Like, it wasn't remotely close. I know you watched that game. Many people did. Was very shocked to see a team that had been playing so well in Major League Soccer just get dismantled. What's some of your quick thoughts on that match? And were you shocked that Vancouver lost in that fashion? Hey, if you're enjoying the video, make sure you give it a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're less than 200 subscribers away from 7,000, and our goal is to hit 7K by the Club World Cup. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and hit that little bell notification so you never miss any of my videos. Now, back to the video.
Yeah, I mean, I expected more from Vancouver, and we knew it's always a difficult game to play when you're going down to Mexico playing against a Liga MX team. But it's one thing to have a difficult game. It's another thing to get completely blown out. So I was surprised that it was that bad. I wasn't surprised necessarily that a Vancouver team or an MLS team, for that matter, goes down to Mexico and loses. And it's not a good look. And it doesn't completely throw out everything that they had done up to then. But that's ultimately what people are going to remember. And it's about winning it. And it's still, to this day, decades and decades in on this tournament, we still only have 3 MLS teams, All-American teams, that have ever won. With DC United, the Los Angeles Galaxy, and Seattle. So that's a long decade or multiple decades of futility. And I'm not even going to get into some of the realities when it comes to one foot behind their back when it comes to MLS and the amount of spending. But if you're not going to change that, then you're going to struggle. But yeah, still, it's not a good look for Vancouver. It's not a good look for MLS.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring that up is because that is an international tournament, and we're playing our biggest rival in Liga MX, and you lose like that. And this is not just some scrub team. This is the best team that's been playing in 2025. Mm-hmm. I just hope it's not a precursor for what's to come, which it probably will be for the Club World Cup. I mean, like you just said, they have an arm tied behind their back. They're not allowed to spend as much, a lot more financial restrictions. And that's what kind of I'm excited, but I'm also a little bit nervous to see how this unfolds for us, because this is going to be something that's never happened for Major League Soccer before. They're going to have people watching their teams from all around the world who have never heard of LAFC, who have never heard of the Seattle Sounders. They probably have heard of Inter Miami at least once or twice, I'd say, because there's some guy that plays for them. Maybe you've heard of them. But this is this is an introduction to the league. And I just think it's going to be bad if the league gets embarrassed.
Yeah. That's a legitimate fear. And maybe, some context is in order when it comes to the FIFA Club World Cup. For many, many decades, the FIFA Club World Cup basically consisted of 6 and 7 teams that oftentimes happened in December or in February. It was very, very small, and basically teams, club teams representing their confederations coming together. And so FIFA obviously wanted to expand this and increase the brand awareness of the Club World Cup, and they decided to do it relative to the United States and relative to the 2026 World Cup, and they juiced it up pretty high. So now you have 32 different teams, and which makes it a much more interesting World Cup, and obviously provides a whole lot more opportunity. And part of that opportunity is to show your wares, which is what you're talking about here. And to say, hey, this fan from wherever they're watching around the world, you may not know anything about this team or this particular league or this area of the world, but here's a representation of what our soccer is. And that's where we get into this this fear that representation might not be in the most positive light. So when you're talking about Inter Miami, when you're talking about LAFC, when you're talking about who else we mentioned? Seattle,
yeah.
And these types of teams, you want them not just representing their individual brands and their individual teams, but also representing MLS in the most positive light. I think that it's obviously going to be difficult with some of the realities that we've talked about here, and it's not fair and balanced relative to these teams, but it never was going to be. And so you kind of have to overcome that, whether you're a Miami or a Sounders or an LAFC team, and figure it out. When you look at some of these groups, you mentioned, Inter Miami with Al Ahly and Porto and Palmeiras. Yeah, these are some good club teams. These are some teams in many cases that are spending more money in the U. Although this is Inter Miami with Messi, so they're spending money, but obviously on kind of one player. I still think that they can acquit themselves well. I still think that they can find a way out of that group. I do think that someone like the Seattle Sounders has their work cut out for them with a PSG, Atletico, and Botafogo. And if the Sounders were able, especially this particular Sounders team, were able to find a way out of Group B, that would be an incredible feat. So I wouldn't put money on it. But I don't think if and when they don't do that, it should be used as a referendum on Major League Soccer or on American soccer or anything like that. Although people will do that. When it comes to LAFC, I mean, they're up against it when it comes to Flamenco, Tunis, and Chelsea. And I think their first game is against Chelsea. So,
yep.
Good luck with that. But things can happen, and then you take your chances getting points in the next two games. So it's kind of like a mid-level type of team coming up against teams that are better than you. But we know this is soccer, and things can happen. I'd rather have them there than not there, even if they're not going to go get out of the group. But I think, I think some of these teams may surprise us.
Well, I'll be honest with you. The poor Seattle Sounders, they just got the worst draw you possibly could get. I mean, you have the UEFA Champions League winners. You have the Copa Libertadores winners. You have Atletico Madrid, who's no slouch in themselves. I mean, that's just brutal. And I'll be honest, if those teams try, don't treat this as just like an exhibition tournament and they actually try to win, I don't even know if Seattle will be able to score.
Yeah,
I don't know if they'll be able to score.
But what you mentioned is important. So since this is kind of all new, we don't know what's going to happen in terms of what's the mentality going to be, what's the dynamic going to be for a lot of these teams that are coming off long seasons, a lot of these players that are coming off long seasons, some of these players that are going to play with the national team and then coming back and playing in the FIFA Club World Cup. Look, you and me, we love soccer, right? So men's, women's, co-ed, naked, it doesn't matter. As long as people are kicking a ball, that's a good thing. The more soccer that happens in the United States, the better. I think everybody recognizes that this is an incredible market, a fertile market, an intelligent market, and one that, unlike other places, can withstand something of this size. And I think can welcome it, and I think can celebrate it, and I think ultimately can make it successful. We don't know. This is the unknown. How are people going to, from the outside, look at the tournament? How are they going to look at the Club World Cup? Is there going to be confusion when it comes to the actual brand of the World Cup relative to 2026? Is it going to detract from 2026? I don't think that's the case. I think it will be a growth that happens through the tournament as people figure out, what it is. People get excited about it. And then if we start to see some of these teams really taking it seriously, and there's a lot of money on the line. I mean, FIFA made sure that, look, what's the surest way to stoke the fires of competition is to throw a lot of money at it. And they certainly have. And well done, because that can motivate. And I hope that does. And as we start to see some of these teams, not just for the money, but also for the representation, for who they are and where they come from, and the leagues, especially some of these leagues that maybe we don't follow a whole lot, or some of these teams that we don't know a whole lot about, that's part of what the fun of a World Cup is, whether it's a Club World Cup or a regular World Cup. It's being introduced to some of these teams, some of these cultures, and then some of these players that use the platform to show their wares, and by doing so, make us more interested in and provide more credibility for those leagues and for those teams.
I just think this whole thing is cool as hell. Honestly, I think it's so cool because how many times or how many fans in Brazil that think that the Brazilian league is better than the
Yep.
Portuguese league, or maybe better than the French league if you take out PSG. They think that their quality is just they think they're the fifth best league in the world. This is a real test to see these South American teams, or even look at Porto's going to play Palmeiras, or Boca Juniors gets a chance to play Benfica. Like that is I don't know if they could beat Bayern Munich, but I'm interested to see how they compete against them and see if there is a gap, how significant it is. But I think this is cool, man, and I actually believe, Alexi, I'm starting to think people here are getting excited. I'm excited about it. I think people are just curious to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned curiosity. I think that there is a curiosity, and we were talking, I think on our previous show about the 7v7 tournament that's going on, and in a strange way, there is a connection, because if you remember when that 7v7 tournament started, nobody knew kind of what to make of it, and as you started to see other teams get that competitive fire, the dynamic changed. And some of these teams that were stacked with older, maybe bigger names, but weren't really taking it seriously, the switch flicked, both within the tournament and then from tournament year to tournament year. And so I think that you are going to see a different level, at least when the whistle blows, from different teams. But I think very, very quickly, people will recognize, hey, we don't want to get shown up. We don't want, a team that we've never heard of coming in and kicking our ass, especially when it comes to, we can call them brands, right? That's detrimental to that actual brand. And whether it's PSG or Atletico or anybody else out there, those competitive fires, I think, will be easily stoked. And I think that's what we kind of want to see. We want to kind of people take it seriously, go out there and win this. And to your point, I think it'll be really cool at the end of this tournament that somebody's going to raise a trophy and be the champions and the World Cup champions of the club side of the World Cup. And as I said, well, we've had it before, never in this form. And so to be the first to be able to do that, it says something. I was having a conversation with my good friend David Mossy about where does this trophy now fall? I mean, are we talking about this in terms of trebles or quintuplets or anything like that? If teams end up winning multiple ones, does this trophy now come into existence and be part of that vernacular when we're talking about how many trophies that they win and how important is it? I think very quickly it can become very, very important.
I agree. I think this is going to be played every 4 years. I don't think this is going to be the new standard for the Club World Cup. I think this is going to be every 4 year tournament. I think they're going to go back to the traditional format you mentioned earlier, six teams next year. But honestly, that makes this more cool. I think I don't want to go off on a tangent about Leagues Cup, but I think that's why Leagues Cup has lost a little bit of specialty, because it's happening every single year. I've told you this numerous times. I'm sure many people have told you this many times. If the World Cup was every single year, it would not be as special as having it every 4 years, because it's something to look forward to build up. It does not happen often. But I think like what you said about where does this trophy rank? I mean, this is technically the champions of the champions. Like, right. These are the Champions League. A lot of these teams are the Champions League winners of every continent and have been for their respected year. So yes, this would, like, if you win this tournament, you are the team, I think. Like this, there's no question about it. You are the best team in the world if it's taken seriously, right? Because you beat every other champion of every other continent.
Yeah, and so if we obviously put so much stock, and I think fairly so, in the UEFA Champions League, right? And we just saw what PSG did and all. But if River or Palmeiras or I don't know, if LAFC or something like that were to go and win this and be FIFA Club World Cup champions, that supersedes the UEFA Champions League. And there will be arguments and debate back and forth on if it does or not. But you're the champion of the world relative to clubs out there. And like I said, I think we both feel that that's kind of cool, and that's certainly something special.
Yeah, no, I agree. The best teams from every continent are playing in this, and that's just incredible to see. Now, as far as MLS, so they have two groups that are pretty, I think manageable with Group D and LAFC, and then Group A with Miami.
Yep.
I was thinking about this because this is a pivotal moment for Major League Soccer. And when they lost to the Whitecaps, as we talked about earlier, it kind of made me think, all right, is people in the room going to start to think, maybe we need to do something a little different? We introduced TAM, targeted allocation money, 10 years ago, 2015. That was supposed to be the bridge to get us from getting smoked by Liga MX teams to having us win this tournament, maybe not consistently, but maybe every other year, right? That was what it was supposed to do. 10 years later, Alexi, how many Concacaf Champions Cup finals does MLS have?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't go far enough. Let's be honest. Now, it's interesting over the past couple of weeks as they've announced that there is this kind of special window that they are opening up to allow teams to sign players, and I don't think it's going to dramatically change any of these U.S. teams and these MLS teams in Seattle and LAFC. But who knows? Maybe you can add a couple players here. But don't think for a second that this is a fair and balanced type of situation relative to other teams. Oh, but by the way, when we were just talking about UEFA Champions League, that's not fair and balanced either. So you play the cards that you are dealt, and you can complain all you want. This goes back to a conversation we've had before with MLS. If you're not going to allow the teams to do what they want when it comes to spending and to get the best possible team and spend whatever money that they want, fair enough. But when you start playing, and because that creates a manufactured parity, and we've seen that in MLS, but that's within MLS. The problem is soccer, more so than any sport, has the international aspect of it. And so when you start comparing and contrasting through these competitions with everybody else, recognize that you are going to be behind the eight ball because you're not going to be able to do some of the same things that others do. And that's just the way it is. You have to be able to overcome that. Sometimes it's easy to say that, much more difficult to do it.
So this is the question I was going to ask you about this. Would it be more, and I'll explain why I believe that you could really go either way, because I'm sure some people say, are you kidding me? This is a no-brainer. Would it be more beneficial for Major League Soccer to compete in this tournament if everyone's trying, like not the B squad, they're not playing B squad Chelsea, but would it be better for MLS to thrive in this tournament, maybe get one team out of the group, or to have every one of their teams completely boat raced and smoked?
Yeah. So this is a question that we ask ourselves. In order to go forward, you need to go a step back. I think we've gone enough step backs. And again, I don't think anything that's going to happen in this tournament is going to change the ways of MLS. And let's be honest, the stuff that we may not agree with is just we're good at spending other people's money. And for 30 years, MLS has existed, and they would point to the fact that it's because specifically of the restrictions that they have as to why it exists. But again, it doesn't help in a tournament like this. I don't ever want to see MLS or American soccer in general be embarrassed, because I don't think that we need that in order to go forward. Everybody understands how we can go forward. I don't think we need graphic representations of the challenges that we have, especially relative to spending. So I'm not hoping for the MLS teams to be blown out in the FIFA Club World Cup, because I don't think that changes suddenly the philosophy and the approach that MLS takes. Now, it can give you a false sense of security if and when these teams do well. But what I choose to do in that instance is say they deserve even more praise because they did it with one foot behind their back, tied behind their back voluntarily by MLS, but they did it with one foot behind their back. So if and when a Seattle gets results in this Group B, that's incredible for them to do that. They deserve an incredible amount of respect and praise for doing it because of the challenges that they face. And the same way with Inter Miami and LAFC, although a little bit different groups and a much more workable type of situation when it comes to Inter Miami in Group A and LAFC in Group D.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning more towards maybe it's more beneficial if we do get boat raced. And it's not because that's what I want to happen. It's more of like reflection, seeing what went wrong. Why is just for example, if LAFC lose to Fluminense, right? Um, or Flamengo. Is it Fluminense or Flamengo? I'm sorry. That's Fluminense, right? Or is it
No,
Flamengo?
Flamengo from Brazil.
Oh, my bad. Flamengo.
Yep.
If LAFC lose to Flamengo 4-0, right? They're going to think, okay, well, we didn't think the Brazilian league was that far ahead of us. Like we thought there's a gap, but not that big of a gap. What are we doing wrong? What can we change? And I know that might be expecting too much from a short sample, like a tournament like this, like you just mentioned. But I would like to think like conversations like that would happen, because this is, like I said, there are going to be many people around the world, Alexi, who have never heard of LAFC. They've never heard of Seattle Sounders. They probably heard of Miami, but they probably never watched a game. And this is going to be their introduction into American soccer. And, first impressions can last a long time. And if every team just gets completely embarrassed, I just feel like MLS would have to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're blowing up in that case. I mean, the fundamental way that they go about their business. And again, we've been embarrassed in the past. We just talked about Vancouver going down and losing 5-0, but it's not gonna change anything. Unless there is an off season where the ownership comes together and says, "Hey, this is a moonshot. We're gonna do things the likes of which we haven't done before, and the likes of which the world has never seen." Because there's plenty of billionaires when it comes to Major League Soccer, so they can do it. They just choose not to do it. But if and when they do, I don't think it's going to because they were embarrassed in a tournament. I just think that there's going to be enough inertia, enough owners that have that competitive drive, and obviously have the deep pockets, that they want to do it. And so they start taking some of these restrictions off, which we know fundamentally changes the structure of MLS, and that separation will inevitably happen, and the haves and the have-nots will be much more stark than they are now, and certainly relative to the rest of the world. Yeah, it's a very different proposition. But again, I just don't think that the results of the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup relative to the MLS teams are going to be enough, if they are poor enough, to fundamentally change the way that MLS goes about its day-to-day business.
Well, and also too, I want to talk about this as well. I was talking to my buddy Vince Maduri, who does the USMNT Thoughts, because he's a big MLS guy. He's kind of been more checked out the last last 2 years. He just thinks that MLS is stagnated. And I think MLS honestly has a false sense of parity. I don't actually believe they have parity. And this is why I say this. There are teams in the league who could win, right? And I know that kind of, that's why there is a little bit of parity. But there's also a lot of teams who will never win because of the way they're constructed. There are teams that will not win the league. There's teams that have never won the league. And it's because they don't have the financial investment. And parity means obviously anybody can win, but there's a lot of teams that never will win. And if you see how many of these newer teams, these expansion teams who have came into the league and won an MLS Cup within their first 2 or 3 years, it's because they have owners who are ambitious and kind of the new kids in the block, the new perspective, like you're mentioning about billionaires that maybe are more ambitious about winning. It's because they're willing to spend a little bit more. You have your Rapids, you have your Montreals, you have, Vancouver before this year. They haven't really spent anything, but they're playing better ball. But those are clubs that are not to for them to catch any strays, but, historically they don't spend a lot of money and they probably don't have a chance of winning MLS Cup. And also too, this is one thing this is like the first thing you and I ever talked about when I had you on like a year ago and we talked MLS. What do the cheap owners have to lose? You cannot get relegated. So even if your team is stinking up the joint, nobody, no one cares. It's not like you're still getting the same equal cut from the revenue of the media deal that every other team is going to get.
Yeah, but this is why the inertia has to build with more owners demanding that they be allowed to improve through spending their team. And when we say a team, it means their business, right? And their brand. I would push back a little in that I do think that the manufactured parity has happened. when you look at it, especially relative to the rest of the world and to other places, in terms of the number of teams that have won MLS Cup, the number of teams that have actually been to an MLS Cup final, the number of teams that have won the Supporters Shield. And look, we're sitting in a place right now where the MLS Cup winner is now in last place. Show me another league where the team that wins it the year before then goes to last place. That would never happen with a Liverpool or a Man City. That just wouldn't be able to happen. And yet it happens because of the structure and because of the manufactured parity that exists in Major League Soccer. I'm not saying that there isn't a separation, and I'm not saying that even within the situation right now there aren't teams that spend more and spend less. But it's a vastly different situation than most of the leagues around the world.
But isn't that a bad thing that a team that won your trophy instantly is not even at the bottom of the table, like historically worst team in the history of the league? Isn't that bad to have that kind of fall? Like, no, I understand Major League Soccer doesn't want one team to win the cup every year, or ideally they wouldn't want that. They're not going to just inherently, I think, stop them from doing that. But isn't that bad to see a team fall off that far? 65 points last year in the regular season, MLS Cup champions, and now they only have 7 points through 17 games?
Yeah, but that's bad on Los Angeles and the mismanagement at Los Angeles. That's not bad on the structure, because we have seen other teams, whether it's LAFC in recent years, Seattle, Columbus, that while they may win an MLS Cup, they don't drop to the bottom. They're still competitive. They're still making playoffs. So that's it's anecdotal, but it's relative to a specific team, I think, much more so than relative to the actual to the actual structure. And again, I'm on your side. I hope that they open it up. I want to see this happen. I do want to see my dream is that there is this moment where all 30 owners and Garber are up on stage, and Garber steps up to the podium and he says, we are going to do things completely different than we have done before. We are going to take all of the restrictions off. And we, in doing so, are going to attempt to become the biggest and best league in the world. And I know it's subjective, but in order to do that, I need to allow all these 30 people in front of me the ability to go and do what they feel is best for their business. And this gets back to your point on why there would be pushback. Some of these owners, they don't want to do that. And they don't want to be shamed into doing that. And they don't want to deal with the pressure that inevitably comes with that. But if enough owners get together and say, this is what we want to do, that to me is my dream. That moment when Garber is at that podium and he announces MLS going in a direction that we have not seen over the 30 years of its existence, where everybody is able to do what they want. But be careful what you wish for, because there are certain challenges and problems that will arise in that system. Like any system has its faults and its problems.
I agree. I agree with that. And hopefully that happens sooner than later. I really thought that 2025 was going to be the launch pad to do that, get people excited, loosen the restrictions, and then lean into the 2026 World Cup hype, and then maybe get some of these people to, come check MLS out while you're making a big signing and saying, hey, you see that guy that played at the World Cup? Come check him out at the in MLS this season after the World Cup's over. So as far as these teams in these MLS teams, I would assume that you're with me on Group B being kind of a nightmare for the Sounders, and there's probably no chance. Which between Inter Miami and LAFC has a better chance of making it out of their group?
Inter Miami, I think, in Group A with Palmeiras, Porto, and Al-Ahly. So those three teams. Yeah, I think Inter Miami has a better chance than LAFC, but I think LAFC can certainly finish second to Flamengo, Tunis, and Chelsea. But, they're going to have to put together a string of three very, very good performances. There's going to be an element of bend but don't break. You need a little bit of, the soccer gods smiling upon you. So whether that's an own goal or a red card or whatever it ends up being, you're playing in your home country relative to the league. So that can play an advantage. And then, Seattle, I don't think anybody is expecting anybody. But again, if they were to do something magnificent and just come out of that group, it would be an incredible feather in the cap of the Seattle organization.
Well, I mean, they have such low expectations, or at least the people do, that they honestly, they have nothing to lose. They're playing with house money.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, we also have Americans playing in this, when you look down at Juventus. And so, our friend Weston down there with Al Ain, let's see, Wandad AC and Man City. So That's certainly a group from a Juventus perspective that you would expect Man City and Juventus to come out of. So, there are more stories than just the actual MLS teams when it comes to this FIFA Club World Cup. And look, from a Fox perspective, we're not televising it, so we got no skin in the game. But from a soccer perspective, we care about soccer, and we want soccer to go well. This is a tournament that's going on at the same time that the Gold Cup is going on, which we are televising. But we recognize that soccer is going on in the country, and we're going to cover it, and we are going to celebrate it while we do our business when it comes to the Gold Cup. And, I wish nothing but the best when it comes to this FIFA Club World Cup in the summer of 2025, because it's going to be an advertisement to the world on what America is a year before the World Cup in 2026. And I want all of the times that happens for that message to go out in a positive light.
Are you going to try to check out any games?
Well, I'm working through the Gold Cup, so I'll be in the studio most of the time, but we'll have the games. We'll have the games on, so I won't be at any games. It's interesting. All these years that I've worked these tournaments, I don't go to any games. I haven't been to a World Cup game in I don't know how many decades, but I'm a studio rat. I watch all of them. So we will have the Gold Cup going on that we'll be televising over on Fox. But we will be watching certainly what's happening with the Club World Cup. And if something amazing happens, whether a goal or whether a wonderful performance, individual or collective, and certainly if the MLS teams and the US teams are doing well, these are stories that we're going to follow from a Fox perspective. Obviously, on the State of the Union podcast, we will talk about what's going on, and like we've talked about, also in general how it's being received and what it looks like, because there is just this unknown of what this tournament ultimately is going to be on the field and in the stands.
I couldn't agree. I'm excited. It's let's see. I think the first game's in 8 days. It'll be Chelsea and LAFC. I think they play on that first day, if I'm not mistaken. It's going to be exciting. I'll be curious to see. We have 4 days. You talked earlier about a special window. Major League Soccer can add a player. Normally, they're not allowed to add any players until the end of July. So they have a special window to add some players. I mean, we should be hearing things pretty soon if they're going to add anybody. Hopefully they do. Some of these teams, Miami has a lot of roster flexibility, a little extra cash they saved for this tournament. Hopefully they utilize it and they can make it out. An MLS team making it out of their group stage would be huge. It would.
Oh, it would be huge.
It would be
great. And look, and I just want to reiterate, this is all good stuff. This is all exciting stuff when it comes to soccer. As you mentioned, both of these tournaments, whether it's the Gold Cup, which you can see on Fox, or the FIFA Club World Cup, both kick off on June 14th. When it comes to the FIFA Club World Cup, June 14th through July 13th, 32 teams, like we mentioned, 12 different cities, including Los Angeles, New York, Charlotte, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Seattle, Miami, Orlando, Nashville, Cincinnati, and D.C. Over on the Concacaf Gold Cup, which obviously we can see on Fox, June 14th to July 6th, 16 teams, 12 cities, Dallas, Austin, L.A., Phoenix, Houston, Minnesota, Las Vegas, San Diego, San Jose, San Francisco, St. Louis, Vancouver. But I'll be in the studio bringing all of it to you from a Fox perspective for the Gold Cup. And like I said, if good things are happening for the FIFA Club World Cup, we'll be covering that too.
Yes, make sure you go check him out at the State of the Union podcast with his co-host David Mossy, and also make sure you check his coverage out on Fox for the Gold Cup. Alexi, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much. We'll maybe try to have you on after both these tournaments are over, and maybe a little less than 2 months to reflect and see what happened.
Yeah, we'll do a review of everything that's happened on and off the field. It'll be fun. I love what you do, and thank you so much for having me on each and every time.
I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much. Until next time, guys, I will see you all soon.